Today we're going to go over my top 10 list for the best looking and sounding 4K Blu-rays of 2025. You can of course apply this list to your digital collection as well, but keep in mind that this is only for physical media that was released in 2025, not before and not after. I also have not seen every single disc that was released in 2025, and this of course is my own personal subjective list based on my audio and video experience in my home. And this is not based on how good or bad the movie is plot-wise. 5 and 7 channel mixes will not be on this list since immersive audio formats have taken over, which would apply to any future Christopher Nolan movies as well. Now, what I did was take my audio and video scores for each movie, added them up, and put them in order from highest to lowest. If there were any ties, I picked the movie that I liked the best. With that said, let's kick this off at number 10 with Wolfman. I gave this an 8.1 for video and a 9.8 for audio. This was shot in 4.5K. It's got a 4K DI and a Dolby Atmos mix. Right from the opening credits, all of my 26 channels came to life. I don't want to spoil it and say what the sound is, but you'll be immersed in all directions with these crunching sounds that are kind of crawling up and down your walls. This mix is also a lot like The Invisible Man, so it does rely on a lot of subtle effects. There's a scene at around 1 hour and 3 minutes in where the mother is walking around the truck, and you can very clearly hear her footsteps track all the way around the lower speakers. You should be able to see the yellow ball move clockwise around the room in the Atmos viewer. And this is one of a handful of times where there's someone or something that's moving around your room. There's another cool part at about 1 hour 18 minutes in where the Wolfman is walking around upstairs, which comes through the top speakers. There's this scene and another scene which uses the same effect where there's footsteps above your head, which does sound very convincing. Also, having this movie take place out in the woods, the atmospherics will transform your home theater into a forest. There's one part where the husband's hearing is amplified so much where he can hear the footsteps of insects. So with every step, the bass just shakes the room. Also, whenever he uses his Wolfman senses, my subwoofers would vibrate my seats. So your subwoofers will definitely get a decent workout. Video quality wise, this is a dark movie, so there are no bright, colorful HDR visuals. It's a lot of blacks and grays with some splashes of green from the trees. There's a few minutes that happens in the city which is somewhat bright, but the majority of this movie is muted with darker colors. HDR does help to maintain shadow details during the darker scenes, and I didn't notice any crushing that wasn't intentional. The movie isn't particularly bright either, so I didn't find anything that really popped as far as specular highlights. Now, even though this movie was shot digitally, it does have a softness to the image, so it isn't 4K digital crisp. There's still plenty of detail on hand, so close-up shots do reveal excellent sharpness with really good textures in the outdoor scenes. I wouldn't say the video will blow you away, but if you want to show off your display's black levels, this is a solid choice. It's the first of many standout horror movies in 2025. At number 9 is Final Destination Bloodlines. I gave this an 8.9 for video and a 9.5 for audio. It was shot in 4, 6, and 12K with a 4K DI and a Dolby Atmos audio mix. Here, around 6 minutes in, it's got some really good immersion. You'll hear the wind blowing outside, people chatting in the background, and the size of the restaurant is convincingly captured in the speakers. The family gathering at 50 minutes does the same thing by surrounding us with ominous music, the lawnmower in the background, and of course, the inevitable death. At 1 hour 27 minutes, there's more ominous music with objects that fly throughout your room, leading to yet another kill. At 1 hour 33, even more ominous music with little audio cues that hit through different channels until the big explosion, which also happens to be one of the biggest bass drops in the movie. The bass has some ample kick during the major action scenes, but didn't go crazy hard. The video quality is clean and pristine. It was shot digitally, so it's got that 4K crispy look. Detail is clearly visible right down to the individual strands of hair, and the textures in every shot are razor sharp. The CG was decent, albeit noticeably fake, but given the context of the movie, I thought it worked well. The color palette is very natural with excellent saturation, never coming across too vibrant or too dull. The HDR makes the explosions jump off the screen, and the specular highlights are bright but never blinding. The black levels looked excellent, elevating contrast while retaining shadow detail in every darker shot, and I didn't notice anything being crushed. In at number 8 is Thunderbolts. I gave this a 9.7 for video and an 8.3 for audio. This was shot in 4.6 and 6.5K with a 4K DI. The audio is in Dolby Atmos. There's not a ton of objects or surround effects flying all over the place, but scenes like this one at 1 hour 45 minutes will bring all of your speakers into action. Well, except for the center surround. That's the only speaker I didn't hear make any noise. My other 17 speakers were good to go. The desert chase, which was in the trailers, is one of the better sounding scenes with gunshots and bullets zipping by in the lower speakers with solid top channel extension when the cars would get all blown up. The fight with Bob at 1 hour 20 had some good immersion when Bob was tossing the Avengers around the room and him flying through the air. Now there are a bunch of bigger action scenes where only the lower channels are active, so stuff like the hallway shootout at 47 minutes does have gunshots in the different lower channels, but you'll never hear anything happen above you, which in a small confined space, you should hear some kind of reverberation or something. The crash landing at 50 minutes should have a ton of effects coming in every direction with all the dirt and debris flying through the air, but everything was relegated to the lower channels. When the Sentry was using his trauma powers, the bass just hits really hard around 40 and 50 Hz, which can vibrate everything not glued down. There's a strong low-level vibration inside the warehouse towards the start of the movie, and when the incinerator kicks on, my subs went into high gear.
It's an incinerator.
And of course, the explosions dug down low and the gunshots had ample kick. This might not be the most immersive movie on this list, but the bass was great, and it's a nice change of pace visually from all the other MCU movies that came before it. At number 7 is Weapons. I gave this an 8.8 for video and a 9.7 for audio. It was shot in 4.6K and it's got a 4K DI, and the audio is in Dolby Atmos. All right, now jumping over to the Atmos viewer, we can see that around the 5-minute mark, we get the girl's voiceover clearly locked in the center channel. There's also a guy at a podium speaking to the crowd that tracks from the left side of the room slowly till it moves over to the right side of the room. It's not heavy on surround, but the space of this auditorium is faithfully captured through the surround channels. At around 20 minutes in, you can see that most of the speakers are engaged. This is supposed to sound like you're inside the cabin of the car. So in the background, you'll hear some very light road noise, and there's also some very light cabin pressure produced by the subwoofers. And this happens for the few times that we do get scenes that happens inside cars. It's subtle, but has a really cool effect. At 57 minutes in, we obviously have to have rain. In this part, it's meant to sound like rain is hitting the outside of the tent, so you'll hear it above your head and through the lower surrounds. Now, these were just a few notable moments with good surround activity. This is not a huge action movie, so there's not going to be things blowing up or a ton of gunshots. It's full of these really small moments that can engage all of your channels in subtle, yet aggressive ways. As for bass response, at 26 minutes 38 seconds, you'll feel this low pressure buildup that should vibrate your windows. If your subwoofers can reach low enough, this scene should sound pretty impressive. At 45 minutes, we get these deep tribal drum beats that totally bang hard as we see Wong running down the street. This plays in 2 different parts of the movie, and it bangs even harder the second time around. This movie does have some really impressive LFE that digs low for those with infrasonic capable subs and can hit crazy hard.
What the fuck?
As for video quality, they did use film emulation to make this movie look like it was shot on film, so there is a light layer of grain throughout. I'd say it's light enough to keep the grain haters from complaining, and at the same time does remove that ultra fine 4K detail that you can get by shooting on digital. It's still very detailed, but with a soft roll-off around edges. The color palette is subdued with a dark, gloomy aesthetic, which of course fits in well with the theme of the movie. So there are no flashy, colorful HDR vibrant scenes in this. This is not going to impress anyone with its HDR brightness. and specular highlights aren't going to blow you away, though I didn't find anything was egregiously clipped in the brighter shots. The blacks were slightly elevated, which can give certain scenes a murky look that again goes back to the subdued, gloomy look and feel of the movie, which I'm sure was a creative choice. Overall, this was a fine looking transfer that perfectly conveyed the tone of this movie. If you're a horror fan or a comedy fan, this should be in your collection. Coming in at number 6 is Nosferatu. I gave this an 8.8 for video and a 9.9 for audio. It was shot on 35mm and has a 4K DI. The audio is in Dolby Atmos. Right at the start of this film, we can see that this is a true dynamic Atmos mix. So whether you've got a 7-channel Atmos setup or a 22-channel setup, this mix is gonna engage all of those speakers. Here in the beginning scene, they've got it so Orlok's voice is coming from the front stage, but also sounds like it's floating in and out from above your head. And those top channels do get a lot of usage throughout this movie. And as mentioned earlier, this mix is heavy with atmospheric effects that enhances the creepy suspense factor. At around 23 minutes in, you'll hear the wind lightly blowing past you with birds chirping several feet beyond your theater's walls. The same effect happens at 37 minutes, or really anytime a scene takes place inside Orlok's castle. You'll hear a light breeze blowing through the castle's hallways, and you'll occasionally hear whispering coming from the top channels. The surrounds will usually always have something happening in them. There's not a ton of hard-hitting frequencies being thrown at you, but there is a lot of deep rumble for those high tense moments, and the bass does build up from those really big crescendos coming from the score. So while it's not big action movie bass, you'll no doubt feel your room shake from time to time. So even though the bass isn't demo worthy, the surround envelopment more than makes up for it. At number 5 is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I gave this a 9.7 for video and a 9.1 for audio. It was shot in 4, 4.5, and 6K with a 4K DI, and it's got a Dolby Atmos mix. At the start of this movie, we've got a bunch of different voices moving through all the channels, giving you some exposition of what happened in the previous movies. So you'll hear voices coming from all around the room. The first really big bass drop is when Ethan jumps out of the chopper into the ocean, and right over your head, you'll hear those 2 planes fly from the back of the room all the way to the front stage. The cabin shootout has good lower channel panning with bullets hitting in the lower speakers, with sound of wood burning and crackling in the top speakers. I think the strongest bass comes from the submarine that's falling deeper into the abyss, while at the same time the whirling from the propeller blades should rumble your room. Video quality-wise, it looks like there is some very light digital grain being used, but it's still very crispy and very detailed throughout. However, some of the flashback scenes from the earlier movies will look very grainy. It's got a natural color palette with no clipping in the highlights and great shadow detail. I think the audio could have been a little bit more immersive in certain scenes, but as a whole, it's a must-have for Mission Impossible fans. And at number 4 is Sinners. I gave this a 9.6 for video and a 9.5 for audio. This was shot on film with a 4K DI, along with switching aspect ratios for those taller IMAX shots. And the audio is in Dolby Atmos. From the very intro, this mix put all 18 of my speakers to excellent use, delivering a truly immersive soundscape. It is heavily music-driven, but the sound design ensures comprehensive coverage throughout your listening space. The film's biggest number, which comes in around the 56-57 minute mark, is a standout. The creative mashup of different songs from different eras features beats that swirl around your room clockwise. You'll distinctly hear Sammy's vocals and guitar moving through the lower speakers, making for a strong case for a cohesive sound system with matching speakers.
So Sinners, we shot on the big boy format entirely. This is what we call large format in motion picture photography. It's just 65mm.
The IMAX scenes, however, appear cleaner and boast significantly more detail with less grain compared to the ultra-wide aspect ratio shots. So if you're not a fan of letterbox blurs, be prepared for some substantial ones, as the film utilizes a 2.76 aspect ratio. Similar to The Hateful Eight or more recently The Creator, the IMAX scenes are presented in 1.78, filling your TV screen, although it is still a crop from the theatrical 4:3 IMAX aspect ratio. Regarding detail, the IMAX shots were undeniably the most 4K detailed rich, while other scenes had a softer appearance. So if you're looking for mind-blowing ultra-fine details, this isn't going to be that kind of movie. The HDR also won't necessarily blow you away with extreme brightness or vibrant colors either. However, some of the on-screen colors, particularly during the IMAX sequences, are beautifully shot and looked just as impressive as what I experienced in the Dolby Cinema. Now, the black levels are often crushed, which appears to be a deliberate creative choice. This means darker areas can be either extremely dark and contrasty, or at other times appear raised and more grayish, whether it's a nighttime or daytime shot. The overall color palette is darker and muted, so don't expect any dazzling vibrancy. Nevertheless, specular highlights from flames and lighting provide a strong enough contrast against the darker backdrop to offer up some really nice HDR pop. So while Sinners may not be your go-to to showcase how detailed and colorful your 4K display can be, I did truly appreciate Coogler's vintage visual style. And for those debating between a 16:9 or scope projector screen, it's films like this with their shifting taller aspect ratio which do make a very compelling case for going 16:9. Whether you're a fan of this movie or not, there's no denying this is a knockout for its home theater experience. At number 3 is Mufasa. I gave this a 10 for video and a 9.5 for audio. It is a CG animated movie with a 4K DI and a Dolby Atmos mix. The film's major action sequences are characterized by aggressive and precise surround usage, creating a palpable sense of immersion. Even during quieter non-action moments, the soundstage remains remarkably detailed and spacious, with subtle environmental effects like insects and ambient sounds floating through different channels, effectively blurring the lines between your home theater and the on-screen world. However, the bass response, while decent, left something to be desired. While the original Lion King blurred the lines between animation and live action, Mufasa leans more towards a stylistic, albeit stunning CG aesthetic that does look a little more animated. But make no mistake, the 4K resolution is razor sharp, revealing an astonishing level of detail. You can discern individual strands of hair on the animals, the intricate details within their eyes, and the photorealistic rendering of the jungle foliage and trees. This is truly top-tier CG animation. The HDR presentation is equally impressive with a bright, vibrant image characterized by rich, saturated colors. The backgrounds are lush and vivid, and the animals appear lifelike and very natural. Black levels are deep and nuanced, preserving shadow detail, while specular highlights in outdoor scenes are handled with precision, avoiding any clipping or blown out areas. It's a visually stunning transfer, rivaling the first CG Lion King in its technical prowess. The audio could have used a bit more bass, but the surround immersion was fantastic. It's another solid effort from Disney. Coming in at number 2 is The Long Walk. I gave this a 9.6 for video and a 9.9 for audio. It was shot in 4.6K with a 4K DI and a Dolby Atmos soundtrack. Right at the start of the movie, we've got a scene that happens inside of a car. If you isolate just the top channels, you'll hear all the loose parts in the interior, like the door rattling and some other light inside atmospherics, while the road noise plays through the lower channels. At around 6 minutes, there's excellent environmental surround with crickets chirping in the background, the breeze blowing throughout the room, and the boys either walking in the back of the room with some light chatter that makes the soundstage really airy and really spacious. At around 16 minutes, this is one of many scenes where dialogue happens with 2 or more characters where you'll hear their voices track exactly on screen. So if someone is talking on the left side of the screen, their voice will come out of the left speaker, and so on. We have another tracking shot that happens at 35:48, where Luke's voice moves from the right side of the room and circles around to the left back side of the room. You'll also hear the engine from the tanks move along with it. At 41:25, there's bullets that fire up front, echo in the surrounds, while there's heavy breathing that happens in the top front channels to give us this inside first-person perspective type of feeling. There's also pretty deep bass drop here as well, and the scene also uses all of your available speakers. At 55:35, there's rain coming down from the front and rear top channels, while the tank follows in the front stage, which again has really great immersion. As for bass response, while there isn't a ton of subwoofer action, the bass does come in hot anytime someone gets shot, so when it's called for, it'll hit hard and it'll drop pretty low.
Most guys, they crap once a week. Me, I'm a once a day type of guy, you know?
Video-wise, this is a great looking movie. It's not the sharpest, most detailed movie that I've seen this year, but the cinematography was shot beautifully. The HDR captures every time of day as it moves from early morning, where the skies are gray, to midday brightness to the nighttime scenes, which are illuminated by either the tank's lights or the moonlight overhead. Detail is neither clipped in those brighter daytime scenes, so the clouds and the skies have smooth gradational transitions, and specular highlights will pop off the screen. And the black levels will reveal plenty of shadow detail with clean transitions from blacks and grays. The color palette is slightly muted, so don't go in expecting HDR vividness except for the one rainbow at around 1 hour in. The movie was shot digitally, but you can tell that they added in some film emulation to give it a more filmic look, which also takes the digital edge away from the image. There's still plenty of fine detail, so pores and wrinkles and clothing textures are still rendered really cleanly, and the digital effects during the kills are also gruesomely captured with more than enough detail as well, and maybe a little too much detail at times. It's too bad not too many people saw this movie because it's a sleeper in the AV department. Now, before we get to number 1, I have one honorable mention. This one is not available on physical media at the time of this video, but it's great nonetheless if you have Netflix. It's Frankenstein. I gave this a 9.8 for video and a 9.8 for audio. It was shot in 6.5K with a 4K DI, and it has a Dolby Atmos mix. Now, this is more of a static mix, so you don't get all those objects scaling throughout all of your different speakers, but it's still very active both in the lower surround channels and the top channels with a ton of atmospheric effects, and bass digs really low for the big action moments. The video quality is 4K sharp and super detailed with excellent HDR. I had noticed some compression artifacts for a few of the darker scenes, so the shadows at times I did see a little bit of macro blocking. But other than that, it's about as good as it gets for a Netflix stream. It's worth a watch if you have a Netflix subscription. And coming in at number 1 is a Minecraft movie. I gave this a 10 for video and a 9.9 for audio. It was shot in 4.6K with a 4K DI, and the audio is in Dolby Atmos. One standout scene around the 23-minute mark where Hank assembles the orb really showcases the immersive capabilities of Atmos. You get this fantastic swirling, sparkly audio effect that genuinely moves around the entire room, engaging all of your speakers. And the subwoofer gets a good workout here with a noticeable pulsating bass that adds to the magical feel. Moving into the overworld sequences, the sound design does a great job of creating a believable environment. You'll notice subtle atmospheric details like the buzz of bees seemingly fly right past your ears, and the gentle sounds of sheep wandering in the rear channels, adding a real sense of depth to the soundstage. Whenever we're in the Nether or the Piglin world, the audio ramps up significantly. There's often music playing in the background, but what's really interesting is the subtle placement of sound effects in the lower speakers. You can clearly hear the distinct sound of what I can only assume are piglins mining. The chipping away at rocks and the clanking of their chains against the ground, grounding you in that subterranean environment. The overall sonic landscape in these scenes feels very expansive and open, and puts very good use to those Atmos height effects. The action sequences also benefited greatly from the Atmos mix. The battle around the 30-minute mark with the skeletons and zombies is a prime example. Flaming arrows whiz from front to back and side to side, creating a tangible sense of movement above you, and the sound of skeletons rising up from behind definitely adds to the spatial immersion, making you feel like you're right in the middle of the fight. Throughout the entire movie, there are these little directional audio cues that pop up, a subtle sound effect from above, something rustling in the back corner that really enhances the overall sense of immersion. Now, as far as bass response, while the overall audio mix is quite active and engaging, I personally felt that the low-end presence could have had a bit more punch. Considering all the action and even the pop music featured, I was hoping for a more impactful bass presence. Things do pick up a little bit in the latter half of the movie with some explosions, but overall, I was left wanting a little more oomph.
Bro, you had tots the whole time?
Yeah, sorry.
If you want a movie that's going to truly showcase the vibrant capabilities of your 4K HDR display, you absolutely need to check this one out. Seriously, this movie throws every shade of the rainbow at you, and each one is lush and intensely vibrant. From those bright, expansive blue skies to the almost otherworldly greens, your screen will be bursting with color. And when we venture into the darker Piglin world, prepare for specular highlights that pop with neon purples and fiery reds. Trust me, some of these explosions will have you reaching to shield your eyes. The black levels here are equally impressive, providing a fantastic sense of depth, particularly in the shadowy piglet environments. The contrast between those intensely bright colors and the deep blacks creates a real sense of separation and visual layering that makes the image truly pop. It's clear that this movie was shot digitally and it retains that pristine, digitally clean aesthetic. This really allows the textures, whether it's the fine details on the real-life human actors or the intricate surfaces of the CG-created creatures, to shine through. You can even see how heavily they applied Momoa's eyeliner in sharp detail. And yes, even the villagers exhibited highly visible pores. This is easily one of the cleanest, crispiest 4K transfers that I've seen this year, boasting a standout HDR color palette that's just brimming with fine detail. Well, that's my list for the top 10 4K Blu-rays of 2025. If you want to grab any of them, I'll leave some links down below in this video's description. So what's on your list for the top 10 best looking and sounding 4K Blu-rays of the year? Leave your comment down below and let me know. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video.